I'm the director of the studio here at the museum, and I want to welcome you all here on this very cold evening for our Connected by Glass event, and hello to everyone joining us virtually. I'm so pleased tonight to be able to introduce my friend Cady Coleman to you. I've known Cady for more than 30 years, and I've watched her navigate a successful career as an Air Force colonel, a scientist, and an astronaut, including being on 2 space shuttle missions and living 6 months on the International Space Station, while at the same time raising her son Jamie with her glass artist husband that we all know very well, Josh Simpson. She has done all of this with grace and charm and with an eye on giving back to her communities. Cady is here tonight after just having written a book, Sharing Space, An Astronaut's Guide to Mission, Wonder, and Making Change. Best-selling author and professor at the Wharton School, Adam Grant, said it well about Cady's book. An inspiring, insightful read about how to overcome insecurities, build bonds, and break barriers. There's no bigger childhood dream than becoming an astronaut, and there's no bigger adult aspiration than becoming more like Cady Coleman. This is an inside look at what it's like to be in outer space and a guide to leading a meaningful life. Cady's going to share her experiences with us this evening, and then she'll have a conversation with Corning Museum of Glass trustee and Corning Incorporated fellow Shawn Markham. Shawn is also a woman working in science. She attended Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts, which is where my engineer daughter studied, and Shawn joined the museum's board to help us focus on science and engineering and to combine art and science and to encourage people to think about STEM and STEAM careers. So after Cady speaks and then Cady and Shawn have a conversation, I'll come back up and we'll have some time for questions from all of you. And then Cady will be available to sign books and to speak to people individually. So everyone, please help me welcome astronaut Cady Coleman.
Okay, first I'm finding my clicker. Dun, dun, dun. Hello. Thanks for coming. I love this place. I've come here for such a long time. Really, it's part of Josh's and my relationship, really, because he comes here on, I call them pilgrimages, Amy. But it's such an important intersection of technology, science, art, storytelling, and people being on different journeys. So I thought it was only right if my slides should start with the Corning Museum of Glass. Because even though this is a space journey, I think that everyone explores in different ways. And it's people here in the audience, people at the museum, people at Sullivan Park this afternoon, these scientists, these engineers, they're exploring as well, thinking, what else is there that we don't know and how can I figure it out? But everybody has different ways that they do that. And I've really, of course, I'm a big, let's see, I'm pointing here. I might not have control yet. Aha. I love control. Let's see, working? You could just switch to the next one while we're doing it too. There we go. And so this is home for me at the museum. But I think that what's interesting to me is so few of my colleagues ever understand what home is like for me. And in fact, when I first got my astronaut job, they would say to Josh, or they'd say, so when is Josh moving here? And I was like, well, never if he wants to stay married to me. Because everyone assumes that someone will move to the astronaut job, right? Let's see if we can get these to go here. And next. So I'm still having trouble. There we go. And so this is like an everyday kind of life for us. So do y'all think that I'm not going to be able to click them? I'll just say next until we. So next. Next. What's that? Is it? It's pilot error. We hate pilot error. Okay. Yeah, I think they got it working. Thank you very much, Sam. Okay. Anyways, I love that our worlds collide, and they collide also in the work that Josh does in space, which he did long before we ever met. But I think it's interesting to think of this kind of exploration where he was inspired by pictures of our Earth going from the moon. Actually, this planet seen from far away. When this photograph was taken, I mean, every person living on Earth is in that photo, right? And I think it's really, for me, interesting. When I was up in space, there were 6 people living on a space station, and that means that every human alive, except for 6, is back there on Earth. And I think we all felt really just as much, at home there. But I like that Josh represents what these places could be, because that's why we explore. And we don't want to just see what is. We want to understand what really could be. And I always hear a lot of comments from people who have been to the museum, and they go, "Oh, I saw Josh's planet there." And I love. I mean, to me, looking at these planets, I look at them, and when I see some kind of little structure that's very regular or something very purposeful, I just think, oh, someone else has already been here, and they have been incredibly busy. And who knows what's going to happen when we get to Mars, right? And that's that big planet all by itself. So relating that to what I do, exploration starts with an application, and all the kids and young people and people thinking of moving on to different things. Often you have to tell people who you are in order to get picked for something. And I think that's really an art, and I felt very extreme. I felt prepared and at the same time extremely lucky to be selected as an astronaut in 1992 and to fly in 1995 on a science mission, because I was a scientist originally, a polymer scientist out of MIT and UMass at Amherst. And on this science mission, our goal was to find out how do we actually build a space station that is made for, doing science. And you may think that playing with your food is not related, but it's all physics, and it's all things that make you kind of think, well, if that does that, if I could eat that way, I wonder how eating will be different in the future. And here's a water drop in front of Jeff Ashby's face. This is about fluid physics. What do liquids really want to do? Down here on the ground, we don't really get to understand that because gravity is such a dominant force. But you go up to space, and you get to see, oh, they want to do that. And a lot of the tiny forces that are difficult to measure, like the forces at the wall during flow through a pipe, or anything that is a liquid in an interface. All of us did a lot of medical tests during COVID. Every time you put a drop of fluid somewhere and want it to go somewhere, every time you fill a fuel tank and you want to go to Mars, you want to be able to make measurements. And the work we've done in space on fluids has helped us understand that. The same with combustion. It happens differently up there. Our flames are spherical. Pretty interesting. And we get to understand pollution and combustion and growing plants down here on Earth, as well as growing food for being on the way to Mars. So all of these things happened on that first mission of setting the stage for building a space station to do science and also to figure out what do we need to know to get to Mars. So my second mission is one I think many people hear. I often kind of skip quickly through it and say 2 things. One is we launched a giant telescope, the biggest, heaviest thing we'd ever brought to space on the space shuttle. And it's an X-ray telescope that tells us everything about black holes. But important here, locally, from Elmira, is Eileen Collins was the first woman commander of the space shuttle and an excellent commander on a very, very interesting mission. An interesting ascent, as you'll see in just a minute. And Eileen is a friend and a colleague, and I learned so much from her on her first mission, her third mission in space, but her first mission as the commander. And I was just honored to be on that crew. And it was for me a great way to understand a little bit about leadership and her version.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We have a goal for inventory. We have booster ignition and
I'm going to go back for just a sec. I think that I clicked through the slides. It's a pretty, in this case, it is a tricky clicker, okay? I do have it on now, but there's a little trickiness to it. And let me just do like this. Okay, so now you'll just hear one. Close and lock your visors.
Oh, 2 days away, but then
So I want you to listen because this was a pretty interesting ascent. You're seeing us on the pad. This is fine, you guys. It's going to work fine.
15, 12, 11,
We do have 2 different audios, but you're going to hear what you need to hear.
6, 5.
There's the three engines starting before launch. The whole vehicle actually tips over like this, comes up straight, the solid rocket boosters light, and then you are off. We're going 100 miles an hour, even in the time it took me to say that. And you're hearing Eileen say, fuel cell pH. Fuel cell pH means that a really significant electrical short just happened about 6 seconds after liftoff. And it's not something on any of our crews that we tend to, really talk that much about because it all ended well. I'll give you the punchline. But basically we had an electrical short where we lost 2 of our 6 main engine controllers. We still had, we just needed 3, so we're doing okay. But what we didn't know was immediately when the engines lit, there was a little pin that was lodged in on purpose to plug up an outlet, and it actually came out, hit the engine bell, poked 3 holes in the engine. So we had actually a hydrogen leak, which led to having less fuel for getting to orbit. And so all these things, and it's a really interesting thing to go to the web and just listen to just the audio of what it was like in mission control when this was all happening. But what it was like for me on board was, it was the culmination of so much training, of learning all the different things that could happen and what would you do if they did. And I didn't actually have buttons and switches to be pulling in my seat on this particular mission. But as soon as I heard fuel cell pH and bus sensors to off, I knew what failure it was. And we had just done that exact failure like the week before. And my first thought was, we know how to do that. And it's because, we're a crew, like all crews, we practiced, we figured out, the system, NASA figures out what do you need to know. And then in working together, we figure out what else we need to know, and especially what else we need to know about each other. And so it may seem calm, but it was actually, it was, I would say, I was told, the most dangerous ascent in the history of the space shuttle that did not end in an accident. So I look back on that, and it never makes me regret going. And let me just click through these guys. And you can see that we got safely to space. And as soon as we were up there, it was just like, we knew that the data was different. We knew we were in a different place up in space than we expected. And I said, Eileen, are we launching the telescope today or not? I mean, not like as an ultimatum to her, right? But but I just needed to know, like, there's things I'm going to do. And she said, we haven't heard yet. We don't have a go, but I'm expecting one, Cady. Just do everything normally till you get to steps you just can't take back. So start in, report in. They'll call us off if they want us to stop. And I love this picture of all of us up in space with the Chandra poster back there. Everything you've heard about black holes ever is come to us through that telescope. And the fact that mission control, well-trained, the crew, well-trained, and a lot of engineers and scientists who did their homework both got this thing up to space, but also designed it such that it was supposed to work for 5 years, and it's been working for 25 years. Eileen and I just attended the 25th anniversary of this telescope. And there, this is I like this picture because I took this picture. And it's actually a high-definition camera, one of the first that we ever brought to space. And I practiced a lot of times on my cats, trying to make sure that, but it's the kind of thing where when somebody used to go, I know how to use my camera, but then when there's some picture that you really want to get, that's when you suddenly don't remember whether you have to do this to it or that to it. And we just can't afford that, so we have to practice, and I have very patient cats. So, but this picture is in focus. It's great engineering data. The big yellow part, the big yellow and white part, that's just the rocket on the butt of the telescope. The telescope is not in orbit around the Earth really close like Hubble. It's actually about 80,000 kilometers away. So it takes, instead of an hour and a half around the Earth, which is what it takes for us, so we go around the Earth 16 times a day, that telescope takes 55 hours. And it was just really significant to know as a crew that we were part of the story of now what are, I mean, there's discoveries, there's, people's children that were working on this project are now Chandra scientists. And to see it to be the only 5 people that got to go watch it go off into the distance. We actually go to reunions with the people who built the telescope and helped launch the telescope and the scientists. We go about every 5 years to reunions, so we're looking forward to number 30. And this image of a black hole that was just taken in the past year or so was made possible because Chandra could tell where all of the where the telescopes that actually took this image should be and when in order to image this black hole. So I'm going to go on quickly through some space station kind of things, and you might be wondering, I mean, after that ascent, that was dangerous. We were lucky to come home, right? Why would a normal, regular person go again? But it's the same reason why when I see Josh and he's making a piece and the piece breaks or falls on the floor, or, I hope I'm allowed to say that, that happens, right? And why would you do it again? Or looking for a formula that he tried to find for years. And it's because of that exploration spirit, and also because when you're launching like this in whatever country and whatever spacecraft, then you have to assume that people are doing their best. And I do trust them to do their best. And if they're doing their best and we all have the same goals, then that's really all I can ask of them. Some of that family aspect of this came out in a documentary this past year. It's called Space, The Longest Goodbye on PBS. It's also on Apple and Amazon Prime, only $4.99. But it's the most human movie I think you'll ever see about space. Our family is about a quarter of it or so. There's another astronaut, Kayla Barron. It's all about what does it mean for people to actually get in a rocket and go when they're not totally certain they're going to come back, but we've all done everything we can to ensure they will. And what happens when they go really far, like to Mars? And it's been a really neat and introspective thing for our family. There's Josh and I at the premiere in New York City. And actually in this panel, on the second from the right there is our son, still with platinum hair from having been Ken on Halloween. And in this movie, you get to meet our son, the 10-year-old whose mom went to space, as well as the 23-year-old who was being interviewed. And then I got to watch that movie with the 24-year-old. And I don't know if he cries every time he sees the movie, but I know I do, and it's actually something that's led to a lot of really interesting family discussions. And I think he understands a little more about why I had to do things like go to Antarctica and live there for 6 weeks collecting meteorites, but mostly learning how to be on a small crew and realize that you have to figure out how to make it work with the people that you've got there. And this is our crew of 4 people, all of us very, very different. I am not a camping girl. The guy next to me in the green flag, that guy in the middle with the yellow overalls, he had made 23 of these trips. And when we started doing these trips, we, meaning the Antarctic, the meteorite scientists, there were 500 meteorites on the whole planet that were available for study. And by doing these trips, our crew found about 1,000 of them. I mean, because they're down there, they fall with equal frequency. They're just easier to find in a place like that. But I learned a lot about myself and things that I was good at, things that I wasn't good at, and how to accept that people are there with me, and I have to be my best person for them, and I have to ask for feedback. And all those lessons really paid off. So did lessons underwater, living for 11 days underwater. So those things are sort of steps you take, and they all teach you something, and it all comes together. Although now I would say that I find in my life now I find lessons from living on the space station come into play, and they all come together when I'm assigned a crew, and we're going to space together for 6 months. And this is my crew. This is myself, Dmitry Kondratiev, Paolo Nespoli, Dimas from Russia. Paolo is from Italy. And we're going to join 3 more people up in space after a lot of training, a lot of testing. I spent about 3 years going back and forth between Russia, Europe, Japan, Canada, different parts of the space station training in all those places. And then finally on launch day, and we'll see the launch in just a second here, you actually get to see, this is our spacecraft, and we're in the middle part of that. This is like 3 smart cars put together. And so when you're going to see the launch in just a second, but I'd like to tell you what you're going to see. That whole little stack with the solar arrays are out, they're in for launch, right? That whole thing is in a can on the top of the rocket to protect it on the way up. And then we're going to go and meet up with the International Space Station, which is, everybody feels bad that it might be small and terrible. And it's amazing and big. So I'll let you see. It's very beautiful too. We're reporting in, climbing into the tiniest elevator imaginable. And then our spacecraft, our Soyuz, is right in there. We're launching off the same launch pad that Yuri Gagarin launched from in Russia. It takes about 8.5 minutes to get to space. And then we spent 42 hours in orbit kind of getting there. And this is where we arrived. I mean, this is a palace. And it's such an interesting place when you get to fly everywhere, when you can do experiments like that with something that weighs 250 pounds and hold on to it with 2 fingers. We have spare time too. We get to do things that we love. I brought several people's flutes to space from the Chieftains and also from Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. And this is the view out the window. And what was really great was every Sunday morning we had family conferences. And with video. Otherwise, it's the phone. We cannot talk on the phone. And so I could actually bring the web camera, just like you have on your computers. I have a little camera. I could point it out the window. And every Sunday, different people would come over to our house so they could have a tour of the space station. And we'd have kind of family time, and then we'd have tour time. But I could actually take them out the window with me. I could point it there, and they could look down and see, for example, Ireland in this case. And so this is our crew. When we get up there, there's 3 people. Now we're 6. 3 go home, and then, let's see, 3 people go home, and now we're a different 6. So it's always a mixture of people, and in everything I know that you do, whether it's at home, whether it's in your community, whether here it's at work, there's just literally nothing that any of us do exactly alone. There's always other people, and we almost never get to choose who they are. I mean, you have that initial, getting married. Whoops. Sorry. You can choose your spouse, but you don't choose their relatives, you don't choose your relatives. So we all have some interesting work to do. And I think it's pretty amazing to be able to take a crew that was actually quite different from each other. Even for space crews, we kind of held the record. And we became a crew that finished each other's sentences and did really hard things, like capturing this supply ship. Here, and this is a Japanese supply ship, only the 2nd time ever to do this. I was the robotics operator that did that, and I'll show you where we caught it. So look at this picture, and something I think will look familiar. So if you look down just to the right on the bottom, that's the Finger Lakes, and in the back there's Long Island. And so it was, we just captured it, and I looked down, and it was at a break point where everything is now safe. And I looked down, and I was like, I grabbed a picture, grabbed a camera, took a picture. Very proud. My mom was from Syracuse, New York, so it's always kind of home here. But all of us leave somebody behind, and that actually turned out to be the thing that knitted us together as a group of people. And so this is my son standing on my little spot where I reported in. There's Josh taking up a lot of the slack. This is me up in space. This is one of those Sunday conferences, and those are some of the things that are in that documentary, are those conferences. And this slide is officially entitled, "I heard you've been rude to your grandma." Parenting from space. But the kids appear to have survived. This is now a couple years old. This picture on the left is Jamie, who's now 24. Josiah's 41. This is our family doing 0 gravity experiments with an important, food that we are hoping is coming to Mars, which would be Cheetos. And they're off. They're following more in their dad's footsteps, I think, than mine. But I think they get different parts of all of us. And Josiah is a landscape architect. Jamie is a freelance photographer. And I think that we've brought them up to think that it's important to share your story. And to do that, and to do it, it takes some bravery to tell people, when you meet a little kid and you want to tell them what you know. I mean, you just have to be like, just say, I'm going to do that. They may not know they need to know what I know, but I'm just going to do that. And so I think to play in public for me certainly took some bravery, but I was glad that I did. And we actually have a lot of musicians in the Astronaut Corps. And often we'll do, not often, but several times a year now, even now that we're retired, we get together and play music and have pictures like the ones you saw coming in. And I won't play this whole thing, but because I really want to make sure that we have time to talk. And that is, this is a duet that I did with Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. I'll let you see him, and then we'll go on to other stuff. So Les Hare, same guy, smart, curious, explores in his own way. And that's really how I'd like to end this here, is that, Josh and other artists here in the Corning Museum, we're all struck by different things. People take us somewhere when they tell us a story. And I'm fascinated that he does that, and he really makes space be a place that people wonder about, when you look at it from far away, when you look at it from close up. Who knows what one of those planets will look like, or a black hole, or an exoplanet. Maybe it'll be scary out there. Maybe it'll be wild and bright. And just in closing here, we're allowed to bring up a few things for family, and they have to all fit in like a Ziploc bag. Up until me, they never weighed the bag. After me, they weighed the bag. And I actually had to wait until literally the last minutes I was on the space station, because we had the shuttle crew come up, and because when you're going to do something like this, you have to make sure you don't lose any of them. So I had people, sort of guarding and everything. And I'm pretty sure that most of them came home, but when I counted, I didn't exactly have all of them. So one of them was shy. But I think that it's really a really great mix here at the Corning Museum, and also in all of our lives. There's an intersection for science, for art, for storytelling, and who knows where those adventures will take us. Thank you.
So I'm honored to be able to ask Cady some questions here today. And I did have the opportunity to read Cady's book. I would encourage
So kind
anyone.
of you.
I'm reading it, and I would start laughing, and my family would look at me, and I'm like, I think she's me in astronaut form, because there were so many similarities.
Do you drop the remote and forget
Yeah,
to turn
so
it on?
my husband, I think, is watching, saying, oh, yeah, that's like Shawn. So there's so many things that you talked about, and one of them, right, I want to talk about family first. And I think, right, I have 3 children, very similar situation, right? Your book, you talk about, swapping the children in the airport. My husband and I would make sure we were both having lunch at the airport so that someone had landed before the other parent took off. And it took me a while to give myself permission that my family and our schedule and what works for us can be different than what my parents did or what other families do. And I think my children are okay, and they survived our family style.
I mean, I would have people say to me, well, because Josh and I commuted. I lived in Texas, he lived in Massachusetts, and we commuted for 26 years. And even people would just go, don't you want a real relationship?
Right.
And I'm like, well, it's actually working out okay for us,
Yes.
And actually, can I bring up the story?
Yes.
Where, I wanted to go to the space station for a long time. I'm somebody that likes to kind of glue people together and, understand who needs what on the team. And I really wanted to live there for a long time and do work. And one of the guys that I knew got to be working, but I wasn't selected for that. for a long time. And he said, well, now I work in the space station program and I understand what's going on. They think that with your alternative relationship, you might miss your family too much and not be able to be gone. I'm like, aren't I like already like been doing this for 15 years and never been late, never missed anything, all at my own expense? And so he said, I think what we do is we get you a job in the space station program as your extra job, and then they'll just see you all the time, and they'll know how competent you are. And you can either, looking back, I kind of go, I mean, that's terrible, right? I mean, it shouldn't be that way. But at the time, I mean, there's only one way to space. And I was like, okay, let's do that. And it worked.
Yeah, and we have the conversation often in our field of work with engineering. We do a lot of travel. My family and I, we were expats in Japan for 5 years with Corning. And I often tell people, you have to ask them. Do not make assumptions for other people about what they're comfortable doing or not doing, right? Let them make that choice for themselves.
And this is some of the reasons that I wrote the book, is that I wanted them to see a little bit of, it's not a complaining book, it's not a whiny book, but it does tell you some stories like that. And actually, just this year, I heard this secondhand, but I'm not shocked. I won't be shocked if it's really true, which is someone applied to the astronaut office and her boss decided that as a single mom, she shouldn't really have that job. And so when asked for a recommendation, she's a very accomplished person, he declined. And the reason I wrote the book is these things these things still happen out and about, and some of us do it ourselves. My book was meant to make people question just their assumptions, because it's so human to
do those
to have a little bit of a bias without even meaning to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to talk about something else that's in your book, the Chandra mission. I know that's very important to you. You talked about it earlier today. You talked about it now. And in there, you mentioned color coding the drawings to the nth detail. And when we moved to Asia, I'm an engineer. I made a spreadsheet. I itemized everything I thought I would need for 2 years, right? I like my kind of toothpaste with the fluoride. They don't have that in Japan. Everybody made fun of me. Everybody else that moved there wanted the spreadsheet for when they moved. And so I think about how many times something we build to master our own insecurities becomes a blueprint for others, right? And so maybe we need to be braver about embracing our insecurities. I felt that reading your book.
I think that's a great way to look at it, in that I had been, I liked chemistry in high school, and then I went to MIT and I took, it's pass-fail freshman year, and I took, it was back then, and I took 2 seminars. What is medicine? Because I thought I wanted to be a doctor. Turned out you have to listen to people my age tell stories about how they feel. I was like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I just want to understand how everything works. And I took what is engineering, and I came out of that. It was really just like I just was shocked. I realized I could major in anything I wanted. And for some reason, I felt compelled to major in the thing that was the least intuitive and the hardest for me, but very known at MIT, which is electrical engineering. So that's the background behind then getting named to be the person who's in charge of the telescope. And we really do have to understand, when you hit a switch, what happens down to every single circuit. And so I think I did have some insecurity going in there, because it wasn't a really good, that semester of being electrical engineering was not my favorite time. And then I was like, maybe I should just be a chemist. Like, I really like chemistry. And I was off to the races.
Yep. So I wrote down my questions so I wouldn't forget. I do want to talk about perspective, because you have a very good picture about that. And I think about, when we see art in the Glass Museum, for example, a lot of the pieces, you're allowed to walk around them and look at them from any viewpoint, right?
And I think we have some slides that
yes,
for
you have a particular
too.
picture. And she showed this today, and it really struck me.
So it's going to be, I think, the third down. Down where you see, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, you're there. Yep, that's it. Perfect. Is
Yep.
that we're taking all these pictures of the Earth, and so you kind of think we must be. I feel like I must be up and looking out, right? And yet, when you think about it, if we can see the Earth, we must be heads down. So what is up? What is down? And we're forced to reevaluate that literally every day, because if I fly down the lab from my cabin and I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the bathroom, and then the cupola is going to be there, and that view just seems like I'd be up high and looking out. And so I actually have to I have to actually flip myself upside down to then see the view. And so it just becomes this thing where everybody does this like 180-degree flip, because it's just so up is down, down is up. So we see someplace from very different angles. Here is Boston and Cape Cod, and our friend Al Sacco from Worcester Polytech.
Yep.
On my first mission, looked down at at the Earth. We saw Massachusetts at the same time. He goes, "Oh my gosh, it's just like the map." And it's true. So we see things from different angles. But now think about it this way in terms of people and what you see.
Yeah.
And I think in this picture, you immediately see me, the big hair. You see Paolo, a little bit of Dima, and some blue shirt stuff. But check this out. That's what else was in the picture. I just flipped it upside down. So now we see Sasha, or Andre, and Sasha, and Ron kind of upside down. And, they were always there. We just didn't see them because we're not used to looking.
Right. And so even for me, I think to myself, okay, maybe I should look at the drawing of this part upside down from a different perspective, a different angle.
The drawing of an actual part
Yes.
that Corny was making.
Right. Right.
And see what you see.
And maybe I should take the data that I've graphed and turned it upside down, because we always tend to think the lower value is better. But if I look at it from a different angle, will I have a different hypothesis or idea about that data?
And I think in terms of people, whether it's going to your church or a meeting or a Zoom room, a place where you kind of know who you're going to see, and it's just so human. Just like, the assumptions that we can make about each other. It's so human just to go, oh, that person, they're going to start talking, they're never going to stop, they're going to talk about this. You just know, right? But who else are they?
Right.
And I think that's just a really important thing to keep in mind, because, I think people have been surprised to find that, I'm more substantive than, I've been somebody who was always quite good at sharing and at speaking and things like that. And I will tell you, it was not something that was in my favor, at NASA, in that it just was like, for the serious people, that's not part of our job.
Right. Right.
Exactly. So look at people and we'll see who you find.
There was another really important
I was just
question.
going to show the last two.
Oh, yes.
I just showed the lake, but we're all so
Yes.
different. There's
Yes.
Karen and the fact that, just having, they've been purposely choosing new classes of astronauts, 50-50, men and women. And now the astronaut corps is 40% women.
So this picture in particular, it strikes me, and it's, the sharing and seeing people that look like you, because I still think back to the 2016 Olympics, and Simone Manuel was the first Black American to win a gold medal in swimming. And I thought to myself, I have chills because I can see all of the other girls that now see her and see what they could do, because someone looks like they do doing this activity.
It made a difference for me. I never thought about being an astronaut until I was in my 20s at MIT. And you saw the living underwater. That was actually quite special to me, because my dad was a deep sea diver. And it never occurred to me. Exploration was really real. He was part of the Sea Lab program when men first lived under the sea, not diving himself, but up on the surface designing habitats. And with that in my background, but I never saw people that looked like me. His friends were named, Uncle Squirrely and Goliath and all those things. And it wasn't until I got to MIT and as a senior, Sally Ride came and talked. And I remember the classroom. I remember sliding in, just listening to her and feeling like, wow, maybe I could try to do that. And so it made a difference. It makes a difference.
It does.
Not everybody needs that, but many people do.
Yep. Yep. So we talk about inclusiveness, and you in your book talk about equipment, right? And so you are
maybe
much,
show the spacesuit
the
picture?
spacesuit, and much smaller than the average astronaut, person. From my own career, very early on, I was asked to design a fixture. I was so excited, all of 23. So I make a drawing, I go to the machine shop, get it made, and I'm taller than Cady is at 5'11", and I bring
5'4".
this fixture out, and I'm very excited, and the people who are going to use it look at me because they're 5 feet tall, and the table is up to here on them. And she says to me, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And I said, "Okay, I'll be right back." Take it back to the shop, cut it off, make it adjustable, right? Because even me, as a young design person, as a woman, was not being inclusive to everybody and their size. And I think with your experience, right, it was also, I could feel your balance of, do I say something? Do I give them a reason to say, "You don't fit the spacesuit, you're out," right? And as I grow in my career and, become more experienced and more senior, I often feel my job is to speak out for those things that did happen to me because I'm in a safer position and I can do so. And do you think maybe that actually is your bigger mission than actually going to space, is speaking for other people and representing?
Or even just in the book representing some of these things. I mean, there's also good stories, and they're
Right.
funny, and Laurel and Hardy. There's always Laurel and Hardy, and I'm always one of them. I know. Oh well. But this balance of, I remember, I mean, especially with the spacesuit, and you said that I was smaller than many. I guess I'm smaller than many of the astronauts, but I'm not smaller than many of the women. And basically, NASA chose that funding is always an issue, and they chose to eliminate the small spacesuit that fit more than a third of the women. And it was, and so by eliminating that, it just meant that a bunch of us had to learn how to handle a much larger spacesuit, which just meant there's a lot more, sort of like the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man. There's a lot more area, and there's so much air in there when we're small that air just wants to go to the surface of the pool. So I'm trying to work over here, and it wants to go up here like this. And the divers are trying to do the sort of, we practice this in a swimming pool. But when I'm going like this, and the people on the surface watching with cameras, evaluating whether I'm doing a good job, are going, "Why doesn't she just reach a little further so she could do that to the couch?" But they don't understand that you are just like, working hard. And so I recruited a lot of help to learn how to mitigate these things. This wasn't anything to do with using the suit in space. It was the effect of having to use the heavy spacesuit in a swimming pool and the air involved. And so it was something that wasn't even a problem for real space stuff, but in the place where people decide, that's where you had to perform. And I got a lot of help doing that. But I think of these kinds of things about how to make change in different ways, where I could say, "Where is my spacesuit? You understood how big I was when you picked me." And I mean, and when they come and they say, "We've looked ahead at the schedule, and we, for spacewalks, and we have all of the spacewalkers that we need." And 50% of the people in this audience wouldn't be the spacewalkers, right? So you can say, "Where's my spacesuit?" And they'd say, "You go wait." And I would have waited 11 years. Not for a new spacesuit, but for a spacecraft big enough to take me not having to be qualified in the spacesuit. And so it really had a big, that one decision had a lot of implications for people's careers. I mean, it's not that I would have stayed longer, had a bigger job, been the chief. Not specifically me, but others probably.
Yep.
So I think that making noise in the way that you know how to make noise, with the examples that speak to you, that you can speak to others, it's the way you fix things at schools, at daycares. You don't want to make them angry, and especially not the daycare.
I have a story about that we'll share later.
Okay. Although we did about size. I mean, this happens in a lot of fields. I mean, medicine, operating tables didn't used to go up and down. Car seats, everyone that has a little mark on their neck from the seatbelt.
Yes.
It's because they're designed for guys.
Yes.
And we've decided that the showers at the Hilton were designed more for her than for me. I was
Yes. It was, very funny story, because she was going to try to adjust it. And as I was standing in the shower this morning, I looked up and thought, how does anyone other than me reach this to turn the massage
I really thought
on?
about whether I'm like, should I bring the trash can in there, turn it upside down, and get up there? And I was like, nah, good enough.
Let's see.
Well, I'd love to ask you. I mean,
Okay.
we've gotten to talk some today, but also
Yes.
on the phone, and I think one thing that we have in common, I think, is that we like to meet people, and I think being open. It doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert, but being open to noticing other people, I think it can really make your world bigger.
Yes.
And I have this phrase, letting people surprise you. It seems like you do that. How do you see that affecting your work?
I think, yeah, affecting my work, we talk a lot about teams. And so Cady talked about being, in the space station with a group of people. We often will go on assignment. And again, as Cady says, we can't choose our teams. But I find it's very important, right? And again, understanding the ground rules. Who likes to go to dinner together every night? Who needs a night off? I am the one, yes, I need to be at dinner with people. I enjoy exercising with people. I just yesterday said to one of my colleagues that I traveled to Korea with, okay, next time we're on a routine and we're going to go to the gym together. But it is knowing what people need what and when is important.
That's
I think.
true. I don't know if you remember when the volcano in Iceland erupted and they shut down all the airports.
Yeah.
I was on my way home with a flight director, so one of the people that will be in charge in mission control, and he was one of the younger guys, quiet, kind of nerdy, not really my favorite, right? And we're on a work trip to go inspect one of the supply ships, and we end up in, the whatever that big, the big airport, the big Frankfurt.
Yes, in Germany.
What's
Yep.
that? Yep. In the Frankfurt airport for 2 weeks together,
Oh, that's a long time.
I
Yes.
know. and I learned that, he had this great sense of fun and music, and, I really learned a lot, and I realized I wouldn't have learned that probably ever without those circumstances. So sometimes it's up to you to create those circumstances, like coming to an evening like this.
Well, and so you talk about music, right? And you are a flute player and in a band. And as I try to get to know my team, I like to be the DJ for my projects. And so usually,
Really?
right, we made glass on a spool for Corning. It was called Willow. Fabulous process. And so we had 100 days to make this product. And so it was the top 100 countdown of songs related to rolling or bad
Really?
days or, yeah. And so we had a project, it was 26 days. The project's name started with a Z, so we did songs A to Z, either artist or song. And then I let the team nominate. So I said, these are the days. You pick a day or a letter and send me the song and I'll play them. Currently on a project, we're having a DJs. And so it helps me, right, because some people will laugh at the song or you learn something. I have a colleague, I would never have guessed he's a diehard AC/DC fan. And every time an AC/DC song comes on, I think of him. So Mission to Mars, what would be the theme song? And
She warned
I've asked
me,
her,
okay?
yeah.
So I would cheat and name a song that only I know.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, not that only I know, but there is an astronaut band, and there's a couple of us that have played music together for like 30 years. And this is actually this great example of how one person can make a difference. It's a Canadian astronaut named Chris Hadfield, and he's a good guitar player, he's a great band leader, and just has that sort of like, let's go, you play, let's do, and then
Yes.
it happens, right? In Canada, on the first Monday in May, every Canadian school kid will sing a song, the same song. Not the same song every year, but the year he was in space, he wrote a song with the Bare Naked Ladies, so a very famous band.
Yes.
And so it's going to be a good song. And on that day, he's on the space station. The band is in Toronto or someplace, right, with the National Canadian Choir, and 400 and something thousand school kids sang this song. How many people in Canada know there's a space station after that? I'd say 80%. And it's way below 80% here. And the song is called ISS, Is Someone Singing? And I think the thing about going to Mars is that you're basically going to be, I think there'll be a funny time when you decide you're really on your way to Mars as opposed to still leaving Earth. It'll be interesting psychologically when that happens. And there's something I hear in this song where it says, looking out my window, there goes home. And I just think it's so perfect. And I think it's really great when a song just crystallizes a moment. But I'll try to work on more songs that other people know.
So that's a great way to end the conversation.
I was going to say, I know we're going to be cut off here.
She's stealthy.
Yes.
There's two of us. We can
Yes.
take you.
Yes.
I want to thank both of you for that really wonderful conversation, and I wanted to open it up to the audience to ask questions of Cady or Shawn. And we have a couple of microphones floating around, so if you want to ask a question, maybe raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone.
And it could be any questions that you have, because it's just us here, right? Oh, I see one in the purple.
Okay.
Maybe do you want a
There's one over
microphone to
here.
go there?
Sharon, let's go with you.
You guys are wonderful. Thank you. So in your book, you have such an incredible memory. I mean, names and... So did you keep a journal? Are you a diary writer?
Yes.
How is this?
So I am not. And I did write that book with a really wonderful writer. I mean, it's still very much my book. But I tell people there's very little I do better alone, than, I mean, I think getting up on a stage works out sometimes, but otherwise I'm somebody just is very collaborative. I figure things out as I talk them through. And together we wrote this in, and I said, well, I don't remember. Like, I asked Sally Wright a question. It's in the book that I met her, right? And I don't remember what that question is. I'm like, do I make one up? She goes, well, it's your book. We have to decide how it's going to be. I said, I say we make nothing up. And she goes, we just say, I had a question. I don't even remember what it was. I mean, so she found all these ways out of it. So I'm surprised that you think that. I'm glad you do. But I name a lot of people. I got to go back and give books to people who are in the book in Houston just last week. And like we talk about the schedulers who make everything work, and they happen to be women except for Arthur. So he was an honorary scheduling goddess, right? Because they control everything. So anyways, I think, but you were telling me that we were talking about how we bring up our kids or try to bring up our kids, and something I'm like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that, was that you teach your kids to thank people like on the bus.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I try to, and Cady has homework for people too. But yeah, I've told my children before, without the bus and public transportation, because we both work, you're out of luck. And I tell them, please say thank you to the bus driver every day when you get off the bus. My phone rings at Christmas time. It's the bus driver. And just like the daycare conversation, I'm like, oh my gosh, what did my daughter do on the bus? And they have to take the bus home. And he said, your children say thank you to me every day, and I really appreciate that. And I said, okay. So we have more questions in the audience. I have to wait for my last part with the homework, but.
Okay, another question?
I won't
I
be
think
so
there was
long.
someone in the middle.
We have one up here in the
Yes.
front row.
And we can repeat questions too.
Yeah.
How long did the underwater training last?
Not long enough. It was really cool to live down there. It was kind of like being in space. I mean, it just happened to be planned for 11 days. And we have things that we're working on, but it's really about learning to be safe in a place that's a little bit dangerous, right? And living underwater, if you live down there even for a couple hours, then it's deep enough that you can't come up. So we have to keep each other safe. So we stayed about 2 weeks. We did telerobotic surgery, where our coaches were on the surface, actually up in Canada. And I told my mom had her gallbladder out a month later. I'm like, Mom, I could have done that, But I loved going out, and even just looking out that big window that you saw, it was a different world, and you got to see that world. And so you saw the food chain in action, and there was big grouper fish that would always wait until everybody went to bed, and then they would swim away from the window. And I just thought it was a really neat world to live in.
Well, and you talk about, meeting new people. I am one of those people that will talk to you on the airplane. I do read signs, though, so if you're the earbuds and book, I don't talk to you. But I'm always fascinated about people's jobs, and with the the underwater part. So there are people who are divers and their job is to help astronauts in the pool. And I'm like, what a weird job.
Well, in fact, I met a woman scuba diving is one of there are these sports where, it can be dangerous if you don't do it right. And I call it getting kind of down to your skinny little self. I do a lot of scuba diving in a swimming pool for NASA, but then to go where there's waves, and I'd be apprehensive, and I'd be like, I'm just going to go down a little bit, and then I'm going to just go breathe and go, see, it works. And so you just have to make sure that you acknowledge that you're nervous about it, and you learn quickly to make sure that you go and do these things that can be dangerous. You do them with people that know what they're doing. You want to go learn how to skateboard, or my kid wanted to go learn how to use the trapeze, to be on the trapeze. And the guy who was teaching, he looks at me and he goes, hey, why just your kid? Why not you too? And I'm like, and we actually have a list of dangerous things things that would take a long time to get better from, that we're not allowed to do when we're assigned to a flight. And we call it being on the list. So I sent a picture of the trapeze. I go, not on the list. Sorry.
I have a question from somebody in the chat, and they want to know, does being in space change your perspective on life? And if so, how?
I think it really does. And for me, looking back at Earth, everyone has their own interpretations, but I look down and I see, everybody is down there but the six of us. And if only they knew how close they are, and how if they were connected. I think of I was at Sullivan Park, we talked about all the different disciplines of different, physics and engineering and science and understanding what the user really wants. They're so, you need connectivity to do that. And somewhere other people are doing those things too. And for sustainability, I think that we need to be able to reach out and find other people with a different point of view in order to solve these things.
Yes.
I think we had a question over there.
Hi there. So I'm studying history, and I have a question for the astronaut. If someone were to write a history on space, what would you say they should focus on?
I think they should focus on making the people real. Like, I think about the space station, and I was on Expedition 26. I was at NASA when Expedition 1 went up, and now they're on Expedition 72. That's a lot of different people up there that got different things done, and also forged relationships with each other. We're talking 15 different countries. So I like it when they make the people real, which is probably why I like movies about history, because then it seems like real people. And even movies like Hidden Figures, we were talking about how much and if you haven't seen that movie, I really urge you to see it. First of all, the bathrooms are still very far away from everything for everyone, but for all the wrong reasons, they were far away in that movie, right?
They were. Yeah. So I would say too, with history, I happened to watch the Voyager on PBS. And the way they captured that, I remember being a girl, National Geographic would come, and there's the picture, right, of Uranus. And just, they talk through that movie of the history, and I'm fascinated by Voyager because they were hoping it was going to last 20 years, and they're still out there talking to Earth. And when you said earlier, the travel to Mars, the perspective of I'm at Mars versus leaving Earth, and that's what I feel like with Voyager, right? Because it's done its job, we think, but it's still out there.
Love that.
So.
I think Reese has a question.
Hi, thank you so much to you both. This has been excellent, exquisite. I'm reflecting, and this is a question for both of you. I'm reflecting on the title of your book, Sharing Space. We've heard you speak from a place of your own expertise and sharing how you've had to work with many people coming from various expertise across the world. And I'm also struck by your philosophy in allowing yourself to be surprised by people. I find myself saddened today in that I feel like we live in a world where we don't know how to disagree or be in conflict generatively with one another. And I'm just wondering if you have any wisdom in this incredible experience you've had and the wisdom that you've gained and what you've learned working with many different people from multiple expertise and what it is like moving through conflict or having disagreements.
Well, and I think, everyone here has stories, for the, and I'd like to hear yours too.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to, I think focusing on the mission, and the mission could be, getting something passed in the town council, right? But for us, there's a different mission, and it was certainly that mission, but that kept us together. And I think most NASA crews, where, you don't choose each other, and yet this is what you've got to get done. And if you focus on what needs to get done and who can do it, and take the emotional part out of that, I think that really is very helpful. And so, I think when you're just like wishing somebody was different, really a lot, I think just think, why am I in? I mean, what if I need to deal with them at all? It's because we have a reason. Let's focus on that reason.
I think too, I work with, a global team, and although all of us come from a country, we are not always our country. And I remember that when I meet people as individuals in our work.
That's actually very helpful. Yep. So. Yeah. And I think up on the space station, that's really happened a lot, where no matter what's going on the Earth, up in space, we are one crew.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Let's wait for the mic. Thank you.
When you were in outer space, did you ever experience anything that would make you think that we're not alone?
Well, I did make a joke about that one time, and you should never do that, really, because I answered, several questions from Congress people. Yeah. I did. I made a joke because one guy, was flying off, and he, bounced off the ceiling, and I said, "We have an unidentified flying object. It's not very good." And anyway, so I wouldn't make jokes about it. But it's a big place, and I haven't seen no evidence to show that we're not alone. So I would continue to look out and look up.
Okay. Well, I think
Cady did have homework for the audience.
Okay.
Well, which is that, and we've talked a bunch about it already, so I'll be short. Next time you go to something that involves you and another person or in a group, pick a person, and you can join in here because we both had ideas, but pick one of the people that you kind of like, you've already kind of given up on them being able to do something with you. Just pick the person that you are least likely to sit with or be with or talk to, and go find something out about them.
Yeah, and I always give my kids homework on the first day of school, whether it was high school and even college. The person sitting alone, don't let them sit alone at lunch. And so either sit at their table or invite them to sit at yours. And my children now have new friends because they have followed that advice. So.
I agree. Thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you, Shawn, and thank you, Cady. That was terrific. And Cady's going to stick around for a while and sign books, take photos if you want, and just say hello to you. So thank you all for coming out tonight. I did just want to take 2 more minutes and tell you about the reasons why you should come back to the museum before the year ends. So indulge me for a second. So the amazing exhibition by the De La Torre brothers is in our Contemporary Art and Design wing, and it's ending just after the new year. So if you haven't seen it, you need to come back and see it. And now we have a new, large, and vibrant installation by the brothers that will be in the Contemporary Art and Design wing on an ongoing basis. That is just absolutely fantastic. We have our new Reykau commission by artist Teirango Kirkwood, which is also in that same Contemporary Art and Design wing, which is the white building. And it's just a beautiful thing to spend a few minutes with. maybe with a friend or a new friend that you haven't met yet. And then Sensorium, which is a gem of an exhibition about perfume bottles and scents. That's closing just after the new year, so you might want to see that. And finally, there's an amazing new glass bridge, which is in the Special Projects Gallery, and it's unbelievable and really awesome. So thank you for letting me say all those things. There's so much cool stuff here that I just couldn't help myself. So one more round of applause for Shawn and Cady.